Today's Dr. NAACLS is going to be about the Board of Directors. The Board of Directors meeting from April 2024. As many of you have seen in the NAACLS news, it was an incredibly active Board of Directors meeting. So a quick thank you to not only the volunteers on the board, but everything that the board did at that April meeting was the byproduct of work of other volunteers, including our review committee members and task force members. So a huge thank you to all those volunteers who participated in that process up to that point. And of course, all the volunteers and program directors that gave public comment, which we will get into some of those proposed standard changes later. But before we do that, to just timestamp this, we're recording this on June 28th, 2024. If it's not obvious, it's certainly obvious with the topic of today's discussion is that NAACLS core documents can be updated up to twice a year, including the standards and standards compliance guide. So the reason we mention this is because we're recording this call. We will put this up on our blog, and we want to make sure that everybody, if people are viewing this 6 months to a year from now, that maybe some of the standards and the compliance language has changed. So if you are concerned that that could be the case, always check out our NAACLS website for up-to-date documents, and you can certainly call NAACLS staff and we can make sure you have the most up-to-date documents. On today's call, at least from the presenter side, is the NAACLS board president, Robert Cottrell, Michelle Gianosa, who is the coordination creditor, board and review committee liaison, and my name is Mark Spence. I'm the director of strategic initiatives. So let's get into the board update. A little housekeeping. All of the documents, especially the compliance language that has been changed from the April meeting has already been updated on our core documents, and by our core documents we mean NAACLS standards, guide to accreditation, and then there's NAACLS standards compliance guide. We will have a more detailed breakdown, especially the compliance guide languages, available soon on the NAACLS news. But also, to be clear, we're going to be talking a lot about proposed standard changes later on this call, and those are proposed. The standards available in public comment have not been changed. We're bound by our policies and procedures to get public comment on any substantive change to NAACLS standards. So since there's a lot of moving parts on this, I wanted to be clear, even if I may be redundant on that topic. So let's start with the interim report. NAACLS staff has heard some confusion about the dates that are necessary and the data necessary in the past. We've heard that confusion. So instead of 5 years of required data provided from the annual report, we are now asking for 3 years. Which 3 years and more specific information is available on the interim report template. You will also see that we are starting to scrub the idea of a year 5 interim report out of the language. It's still due about halfway through your award, but we don't want to introduce any confusion that there may be 5 years of data necessary. Only 3 years of data, and it's an interim report that happens about halfway through your award for max programs. Volunteer expectations. We took a look at some of our expectations for our volunteers. This was an initiative by a task force and review committees, and then also the board. Just kind of an overall look of what we expect from all of our NAACLS volunteers. Robert, did you want to go into this at all?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And I would just want to reiterate, I share Mark's sentiment for just the appreciation we have for all of our volunteers, the board of directors, but also our staff. So Michelle and Mark, just thank you so much for putting together such a comprehensive NAACLS report today. Again, when we look at volunteer expectations, you'll see this maybe reiterated a few times in this call. We're in a different academic climate than we have been. We're in a different clinical setting or healthcare setting than we have. been in the past. And with our growth and changes, this is really necessary to have a more comprehensive establishment of volunteer expectations, guidelines, and principles to follow.
Thank you, Robert. I do want to point out, if you're curious about what those expectations are, those are now available in the volunteer handbook as well as our P&P manual. Both of those documents are available on our website. Okay, standard 2 edit. So one of the major things that happens when any standards change, especially a more holistic review of the standards that we are going through currently, is that after the review of the standards changes, we need to look at the standards compliance guide. And once we're looking at the standards compliance guide and kind of looking at the proposed the standard again approved for the 2020 for the upcoming draft standards, we notice a lot of repeat and redundant information that could be confusing, that really kind of muddy the way we develop the compliance language. Because of that, we have kind of stripped away and changed some of that language. Now, the general requirements and the requirements of standard 2 have not changed. And because of this, the board chose for it not to go out to public comment. As you see here, and I can hand it over to you, Robert, after this, it's the essential components of we're still asking for a program to create a plan, collect data on that plan in order to evaluate it and make changes based on that data. So I'm going to let Robert speak on a little bit, and then staff has prepared kind of a map to kind of demonstrate, just in the interest of transparency, how we are not changing the requirements. We're really trying to make the language easier to understand.
Yes, and just to reiterate, this is us hearing you, right? Over the years, hearing the feedback, really taking the time to review that, digest it, and say, we talk about NAACLS being non-prescribed. We talk about NAACLS really allowing the programs to be a program. And to do that effectively, we have to have a standards guide, a compliance guide that is easy to understand and not be so confusing, so verbose, and have the same language stated in multiple points and maybe not have it as clear as it should be. So this is our means to clean it up. And we really appreciate everyone's feedback. It might have taken us a little time to get here, but we greatly appreciate everyone's feedback in that regard.
So what really initiated this conversation was this section right here. And this is still a holdover from the 2012 standards. This is probably language that's been in the standards for over a decade. And while it may have been appropriate and helpful when we first initiated a more outcomes and assessment focused set of standards, reviewing it now, it just seems to could lead to confusion. So what you see specifically, like in this outcome measures section, we're talking about reviewing, analyzation, and use and continued quality assessment when we have multiple substandards later in the standard to address that. So on the left, I should say, you see the language that was approved by the board of directors in September 2023. This went out to public comment already. On the left, it was available to the public, and we reviewed the comment on that. What you see on the right is the language approved by the board in 2024. So we're still requiring that outcomes be measured and documented and submitted to NAACLS annually. We're removing, you will see this language right here has been removed, mostly because NAACLS has requirements of submitting reports in standard 6. Having this requirement in 2 places would lead to the possibility that a program could be cited twice for the same non-compliance. So we wanted to remove that kind of possibility. You'll also see we are removing the examples from the standard, which isn't to say the examples aren't pertinent, but we're really trying with this next version of the standards to remove all examples from the standards and place those examples in the standards compliance guide. Previously, especially when it comes to faculty requirements, having examples in the standards led to a lot of program directors thinking that those examples were actual requirements. So we're trying to really diligently go through the standards and just try to remove a lot of those examples and replace those in the standards compliance guide. The feedback you'll see has not changed. Again, we've removed some of this redundant language where we're talking about reviewing items in a substandard that's just about gathering feedback. And then you'll see the D is where we've, in the fourth substandard is where we've really relocated a lot of this information. So, Robert, I'll hand it over to you in a second, but we really wanted to, with this section D, we wanted to not only relocate the information, but we really wanted to specify these items of assessment and modification that we required for about a decade. We need programs to review the feedback. We need programs to analyze the curriculum development and resource acquisition allocation. We need programs to make modifications based on that analysis. And we need programs to close the loop and assess the effectiveness of any of the changes.
And again, thank you, Mark. This is simplifying language that is over 10 years old. Again, we are in a different landscape, a different academic climate. And for section D here, you'll see that these are all things that we practice. You will already have a means to measure this, document, and utilize this for your respective programs. So this is an appropriate means to show that continuous program assessment and modification.
Administratively, when we are going to actually make these changes in the standard itself, instead of putting these items in the current 2012 standards that are always evolving, while the changes aren't drastically different than the current, substantively different than the 2012 standards, just to kind of eliminate any confusion, we will add this change in with the draft standards when those are completely approved, which we are hoping to do in the September 2023 meeting, which means the first programs submitting under the standard language would be with those who are submitting self-studies in fall 2025. Did I get that right, Michelle? Thank you. There's a lot of years. It seems bizarre to be thinking about fall 2025 already. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. That's not what I wanted. There we go. And again, just to reiterate, like the board didn't consider this a substantive change, but we wanted to put it through because we want to make the language easier, but also we wanted to be upfront with these changes and not just include them in a later version of the standards, because we understand the huge part and the requirements and the work that goes into standard 2. So again, it's really a lot of effort in transparency and making sure programs know the expectations. The NAACLS board has finalized on a idea commitment. Robert, would you like to expand on this?
So yeah, so again, this is our commitment. We are not creating standards around this at this time, but this is our commitment to inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And you will see that, clearly stated in all of our standard guides, our compliance guides, and it's something that the board fully approves.
A quick note about AI. There's developing discussion everywhere, not just only in education, about the use of AI. The NAACLS board of directors had to talk about that specifically in how AI is used within NAACLS meetings. Robert, do you kind of want to go into the board's decisions on this?
Sure. Again, just to be clear, this is based on our, internal NAACLS requirements for our meetings. This doesn't, again, there's no standard that we're implementing for you and your institutions. This is, again, our decision. So we do have a means to use certain AI note-taking programs for internal meetings. But outside of that, we will not be using any outside note-taking AI bots for board meetings or high-level talks.
Yeah, admittedly, this is probably more applicable to NAACLS volunteers who are on a lot of task forces, who are on, especially our committee members. But if for some reason you as a program director are asked to sit in on a task force meeting or participate in a task force and you have an AI bot that automatically comes with you, that bot will get kicked out of the meeting, just so everybody's kind of prepared for that. And obviously we'll have this policy language within our documents, but I know some of those documents, especially our policy documents, can get, we just have a lot of policies, and so it may seem hidden. Okay, let's start discussing potential standard changes. Before we get into the meat of that, we did want to announce, and we announced this on the NAACLS News, as well as LinkedIn, that we have extended a bit the deadline for public comment. This coming Monday at 9 a.m. That's when we're setting the new deadline. So after this call, if you want to go back to the NAACLS News and submit public comment through Alchemy, you're more than welcome to. We just need to end that deadline because the public comments are reviewed by our review committees, which are meeting later in July. And we want to make sure they have time to consider and give time to give thoughtful consideration to the comments we've received. Also, if there is some commentary that happens during the Q&A, similar to any commentary that may happen on the ASCLS Educators Listserv or Facebook, that kind of discussion is great, and we definitely hope those discussions are taking place. But as far as the discussions and the commentary that will be reviewed, it's only what's submitted through that Alchemy link. It just helps us organize it and make sure that none of your feedback is lost. And kind of as I mentioned at the top of this call, we're only for the purpose of today's call, we're only going to get into a handful of the standards. Some of the standards that created the most discussion in the public comment so far. This is not a comprehensive list. For the comprehensive list, we have that list both within the Alchemy document and outside as a collection. And on the NAACLS News, probably next week, if not the week after with the holiday, we'll have a full NAACLS board report that will get into not only the standard changes, but any compliance language and policy changes that have happened in addition to what you're seeing here. So let's talk about required workshop attendance, which to no surprise probably had the most comments. These items were available within, we tried to put in as a rationale to the proposed standard changes, because we know that kind of helps contextualize the discussions happening in the review committee and board level. So I will once again hand it over to Robert to kind of summarize some of the things that the board is considering in conjunction with this proposed standard change.
So again, thank you, Mark. We're never going to quite make everyone happy with this, but this is a means to help support program directors, high-level administrations and programs, particularly as there tends to be in the last 10 years high turnover rate, to really allow these individuals to prepare for their new roles, to attend workshops. Not having the registration fee or waiving that, I think, is a great step in the right direction. Offering it both on ground in person as well as in the virtual environment, I believe, is something that we're really committed to making sure we maintain to support all individuals that prefer one method of delivery versus another. I do understand that um, this may require some individuals to utilize professional development funds through their institution a little differently. We're not looking for anyone to necessarily have to pay out of pocket, utilize your institutional resources to attend and support NAACLS, as well as creating an environment and educational workshops, programming, networking for you and to support you.
Yeah, and just to reiterate one thing, just because it came up repeatedly, understandably repeatedly in the comments, is that NAACLS has given hybrid or virtual workshops since 2020, and internally, staff-wise, we support that commitment that Robert referenced to continue that, to make sure that workshops are either hybrid or completely virtual. There was also a lot of commentary about why the Dr. NAACLS are not accepted as this kind of recognized approval. And I think the discussions really revolved around the kind of intensive work that our volunteers put into those workshops. And honestly, and comes from somebody who oversees the development of the Dr. NAACLS, those workshops are just at a much higher educational level than Dr. NAACLS. Which is fine. Dr. NAACLS is a way to continue conversation between program directors and volunteers and staff, but the intent never was, and it would quite really change the way we organize and administer the Dr. NAACLS to have them be at the level that our workshops are developed. So I at least wanted to address that question because it did come up repeatedly, and I couldn't remember if that was explicitly stated here.
And it does come down to resource allocation, Mark, right? And we have to make sure that we're a volunteer-driven organization. So we have to utilize those resources, our volunteers, effectively, again, to provide the appropriate content, particularly at the workshop level.
We received a lot of discussion about removing the certification requirement from the clinical liaison. And I will once again hand it over to our content expert, Robert, to go into some of the details about the discussions on this.
So again, the clinical liaison has always been around to, in some iteration. So it is worth noting, written here on the screen that since the 2012 version, we have not required the clinical liaison to be certified. Okay, and we want to make sure that, again, we give the programs the ability to designate those individuals that are appropriate and can demonstrate knowledge of their program discipline, and having a clinical liaison requirement is something that I know, again, we're not going to make everyone happy or get that right, but this is moving in the right direction.
What we saw in the earlier versions of the 2012 standards, when this requirement was much more strict, MLS and MLT programs would not have an issue fulfilling this requirement if we required a certified practitioner as a clinical liaison. However, what we were seeing, and I don't think what we anticipated at that time, is some of the quote unquote smaller disciplines with just a smaller number of available practitioners, certified practitioners, a smaller number of programs were having a really hard time achieving that compliance. So it really has forced over the past 10 years, the board and the review committees to kind of discuss what is really necessary to have a viable clinical liaison in the standards. So again, a little more background on those discussions, because a lot of those discussions predated Dr. NAACLS, and so yeah, just in the interest of transparency. We made a change to our fair practices standard, and it was really, as you'll see in the public comment, it's about separating one standard into two. So it kind of makes it easier to develop compliance language. Robert, do you have any additional insight to this change or proposed change?
Again, the changes to assist sponsors, assist sites where, again, you're communicating and you are, um, you know, looking at what is the definition of supervision and appropriate substitution to allow your program to thrive and to utilize staff and faculty with your clinical affiliates. Give you flexibility.
Speaking of flexibility, let's talk about the inclusion of MOUs with affiliation agreements. It's your show, Robert.
Okay, so again, in this context, the MOU is really designed to support and complement an existing affiliation agreement. Again, we're looking to provide additional details, flexibility with an existing affiliation agreement that has a defined, clear framework. Okay, it's not meant to replace an existing binding and affiliation agreement. It's meant, again, to enhance. Okay, provides clarity of communication between institutions. Okay, you can use it in many different ways to support your growth of your program. You know, MOUs, again, can be utilized to create a draft, a proposal that allows you to move forward with clinical affiliations and still be in the negotiation phase to approve a final affiliation agreement. They are, it is a designed to be binding between those two institutions where you're going through a review and you are, again, negotiating, you're signing off on, because we know building clinical affiliation agreements typically can take weeks or months. Not that an MOU cannot take that long, but again, it's designed to enhance and provide a bit more flexibility. And I'm sure we will get more into that later on in the Q&A.
Okay, we numerous changes related to sponsorship. Over the past, I don't know, 5 years or so, NAACLS staff continually takes calls from programs pitching innovative and creative delivery methods and asking what sponsorship model it falls under. Specifically, there's a lot of confusion with the term multi-location, how NAACLS defines it, and how that may affect a program's accreditation. So to be quite honest, some of the language in the 2012 standards was developed to anticipate educational trends that didn't really bear out in the lab sciences for whatever reason. So we technically, as NAACLS defines it, we don't have any multi-locations right now. Michelle, please correct me if I'm wrong. And if we do, there's very few. So this change currently is to eliminate confusing language without eliminating and causing unnecessary confusion to developing creative delivery methods. This task force was just kind of created out of a reaction to these questions that NAACLS received in the office, as well as those happening on the ASCLS Educators List. So in order to kind of move forward with this proposed change, the task force and the board felt that we may need to slightly change the terminology that we use commonly within NAACLS. So the program is still, and this isn't a significant change, but the program is still the culmination of whoever provides the education with both the sponsor and the affiliates. We define the sponsor now as the party that ensures that all aspects of the standards are being addressed, that employs the program director, and that does the majority of the teaching of the didactic content. And that includes, if it's a model where they're broadcasting virtually, that didactic content. The partner may be another didactic program, or if you're a hospital-based program, another hospital program that is assisting with providing didactic content, or may take some of the administrative responsibilities. They aren't required to employ a program director, but similar to our current multi-location language, we are asking that there be a specific NAACLS approved faculty member, what we're calling site program administrator, to really ensure that there's some kind of affirmed content knowledge on that site where that didactic material is being taught. And finally, affiliate. We received a lot of good feedback on this in the public comment, and I think it will be taken back to the task force and the board to kind of more clearly define affiliate, the language you see here, as clinical affiliate. Because you'll see within the body of the definition that we're really talking about clinical affiliates. And because of that, to more clearly define our expectations for an educational affiliate. And I think it's very likely that will happen. One thing I wanted to address is there was a lot of questions of that the affiliate, especially educational affiliates, can't grant the degree. And we can change this language a little bit for more clarity. But what we mean by that is within standard 1, there needs to be, the sponsor will either needs to grant the appropriate, as defined by the standard, degree or certificate. So what that means is we're essentially ensuring that students will receive some kind of culminating mark that they can take and say, I've completed this program. I can demonstrate that either with this degree or with the certificate because I went to a hospital-based program. What this definition is not intended to mean is that if you are a clinical-based program with an educational affiliate, that educational affiliate can still grant the degree. But since that educational affiliate is not the sponsor, their name is not on the website when it comes to an accredited program, their name is not with the ASCP VOC when your students register for the exam, we don't necessarily look at that degree. That is something you can do, but that is something that's not reviewed by NAACLS. Similar with if you're an educational sponsor and you have a clinical affiliate. That clinical affiliate can grant a culminating certificate. It's just, it kind of exists outside of the NAACLS review. So we can definitely make that clear in this affiliate language. That's kind of how we have operating policy right now. But was some great feedback we got from the public comment. Robert, did you have anything to add about kind of these refined definitions?
No, that was well said. I agree with you in terms of, being transparent, having clear language, and still there's a need to review the affiliate definition. And I really do appreciate the feedback we got. Really was insightful and something that the task force and board will absolutely look at, and I can see some additional changes coming.
So this kind of reiterates how we began. You're probably going to start hearing the language of partnerships more than specifically calling things consortiums or multi-location, but that will all fit under one standard. We reached out to programs currently in consortiums. We talked to them about their structure because the board really want to make sure these changes wouldn't leave people on the outside looking in. So again, this is really hopefully an easier way to move forward internally and not feel like you need to call the accreditor with every possible change you're thinking about doing to the program, especially that higher administration. Now, one thing new that has precipitated from this are lines of authority, having a line of authority and publishing a line of authority. And I will certainly need Robert's help with this.
So this is created for the sponsoring institution, okay, and that program. This really it needs to be defined. I feel that in the past we've all delivered this in a matrix somehow, but sometimes there's confusion and there's not a lot of transparency when it comes to a site visit or a self-study review in terms of the clear line of authority from the top level administration at an institution sponsor down to the program director. So this is just creating that defined line of authority and matrix that allows for other faculty and staff and programs where maybe that there is high turnover of individuals, or there's some sort of disruption in their hierarchy. So internally, they know, how to maintain, programmatic, development, accreditation standards are met in the event that someone has to step away, either permanently or temporarily. And it gives students a clear line of authority in regard to who they report to. And if concerns or just issues arise where they need to escalate above their program director, what does that look like at their institution? So there, catastrophic event that takes one or more administrators out of the program temporarily, it gives the sponsor a means to still operate that program, still be compliant, and still deliver. Sorry,
Yeah,
my connection's a little unstable.
no, you're good. It's that last aspect that was really at the core of the board's conversation, because as programs may administratively get more and more creative and administrative responsibilities may be spread over 2 or 3 labs or 2 or 3 universities or community colleges, we want to make sure the students know exactly who to contact if they have a significant issue. So that's really at the heart of not only making sure one is defined, but it's available to current prospective students. We spoke about this a little bit already. The site program administrator is there to handle discipline-specific didactic elements for partners. And it's just really making sure that there is some kind of recognized content expert available to handle those kind of questions. Robert, do you have anything additional that may shine a light on this?
No, that's pretty straightforward.
Great. Okay, let's get into some of our international initiatives. So we currently do have a policy where NAACLS documents need to be submitted in English. However, that policy is pretty obscure, and it takes a little bit of unnecessary guidance to point out to non-US programs that are looking to start a program. So because of that reason, and additionally, in a really kind of philosophically as an organization, NAACLS really tries to put all of our requirements in the standards. It's a way for us to make sure that we are not blindly or just presenting requirements in a non-transparent way. So it's kind of a way to clean up our current process. Robert, since you were on this task force, did you have anything else to add with kind of those discussions?
No.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward there.
Accreditation liaison. So similar to disciplines like Path A and HT, who have challenges finding individual content experts with the requisite teaching experience to be program directors, we kind of took those lessons in that model and developed something for international programs that may not have the access to the ASCP BOC exam, or even if they do have the access, if they have a talented and competent program director that knows their community and knows their community's requirements, and has demonstrated a certain level of expertise to possibly serve as a NAACLS program director without becoming ASCP BOC certified. And this is one of those options. So Robert, can you add any additional I feel like I'm saying insight 15 to 20 times, but what do you got to say about it, Robert?
I'm always drawn back to the NAACLS mission statement. Okay, and again, to summarize it, NAACLS is committed to being the premier accreditation agency for ensuring the advancement of education in clinical laboratory sciences and related healthcare disciplines provided by both domestic and international programs. So again, this is a means to really create a pathway and support international programs and those that want to seek relationship with NAACLS, and still allowing us to navigate those international waters, providing our core values that we stand for, and ensuring that these non-US partners, have access to NAACLS content experts and stay on a clear path to, sorry, I just got to switch a few screens here, a clear path of following our principles and guidelines without compromising their own requirements in their unique healthcare ministries and regulatory bodies. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe there's too much of a word salad.
So similar to in the interest of pathways, the accreditation liaison, while very helpful and be helpful to any program director, is still incumbent on the availability of practitioners with ASCPI certification and that experience of with NAACLS accreditation. So in addition to that, we wanted to provide access for program directors who have experience to demonstrate they can do the work without the certification requirements. So we don't really have a formal appeal process for that kind of pathway. And this is what that does. It gives a program director without that certification or an access to a colleague to act as a accreditation liaison to start the accreditation process. And based on materials outlined in the public comments, demonstrate to the board that they can start an accredited program that can meet the standards and they can justify their qualifications without being directly tied to the ASCP BOC exam. That is trying to do it as succinctly as possible. This is kind of a nuanced policy with a lot of if, that, then this. And that information is currently available on the NAACLS news. Robert, anything else about the initial international acting program director, which would lead to kind of a reconsideration process?
No, the only other thing to, add or just reiterate is what you said is, again, it's bridging. It's allowing that accreditation liaison to, that has the knowledge of NAACLS accreditation process to work with that program director, work with that institution, and bridge, the gap that could arise from a non-US program, and really provide a direct conduit with proper communication, transparency, and it will take some fine tuning. It will take work.
And finally, a really positive announcement, and I'm just going to let Robert, you do this.
But thank you. So yes, the Distinguished Service Award. So I am thrilled on behalf of the Board of Directors, our CEO, Marissa James, and our NAACLS staff, congratulate Cecile Sanders as the next recipient of the NAACLS Distinguished Service Award, in recognition of her outstanding service to NAACLS and to laboratory medicine as a whole. So it is worth noting that this is only the second time the NAACLS Board of Directors has identified a recipient of the Distinguished Service Award. So she joins Dr. Shauna Anderson-Young as a conferee, and we are just so pleased for Cecile. So thank you.
And I would like to add a quick plug on this. We are incredibly lucky to have an overwhelming amount of NAACLS volunteers that have worked on every level. Board members, review committee members, reviewers, all of the above, and as well as individuals that have only served in those individual roles. We take nominations from the public for this award annually. If you have anybody that you have worked with as a volunteer, if you're a program director and had a great site visitor, but you don't know their overall contribution, still make those. If you had a great mentor as a volunteer, anybody that you think may have acted in an extremely positive way that you think really represents how NAACLS represents NAACLS as an organization, whether that be staff or the volunteers, please make those nominations. Staff can do all the work to put together all of their review stats and their review committee years if applicable. Don't get weighed down by some of those aspects if you have somebody that you think really representative of the organization in a spectacular way. We can take the baton on that. So those calls for nominations come out every November. So that gives you about, I just made myself do math, around 4 or 5 months to kind of think who you would be a worthy nominee. We already have some Q&A. And just a reminder, we did extend this time to 90 minutes because we knew it would be a longer presentation, which may result in more questions. But before we get to Q&A, a surprise slide. The reason I'm adding this is we have a new NAACLS staff member, Julie. So she is going to be our frontline person to handle phone calls and some emails. We're really excited to have her on board. Bringing somebody else new is always, it's exciting to bring new energy, new ideas, new insight. Those outside perspectives are usually incredibly helpful from day one. She's already hit the ground running. So if you get a call or email answered from a Julie, it's our newest member of the NAACLS staff. Thank you to all the volunteers that are on this call or watching the video, or even if you didn't watch the video or on the call, thank you anyway. But I want to bring up that this list is our list of DLPs. The DLPs are available as content experts to help you answer a question about standard interpretation, or maybe if you need a little clarification about what the compliance guide needs. These are current review committee members, so we will be seeing them all face-to-face in a few weeks. They are all incredibly busy right now. So yeah, they are there to assist you with those kind of items. They're not necessarily there to give a preliminary review of any documents. That kind of leads into complicated conflict of interest policies, but they can certainly kind of help you understand what we're looking for from the standards. And with that, we'll do some Q&A. Will definitions such as a partner and affiliate be in your standards document for reference? Yes, I think we can mention now that behind the scenes, NAACLS staff and volunteers have been working very hard on a glossary. That glossary we're hoping to be available in the standard compliance guide that will go with the new standards. Still haven't decided whether those are going to be the 2023 or 2024 standards, but whatever the name ends up being, the compliance guide that's getting revised to go with those standards will include a glossary. That glossary will be a work in progress because we have a lot of terminology, but we have to start somewhere. And Michelle and I were just working on this yesterday with other staff members, and partner and affiliate are there, and it will be in the compliance guide. If two NAACLS approved programs with separate program directors collaborate to teach components of didactic course, would they be designated each other as partners? Without more information, I mean, that could be an educational affiliate. So a lot of times when we're talking about sponsorship, I know our mind jumps to curriculum, and that's certainly a part of it, but it's also standard one. That's really what we're trying to figure out with the sponsorship. Who is handling those higher administrative aspects? So is the content part of that? Yeah, because we had to make sure that There was people with content expertise available. If you have a partner that may not have gone through the accredited process, but may teach 35 to 40% of the content and broadcast that to other students. But without any more detailed, I would say they could be educational affiliates unless they are taking responsibility for administrative possibilities, and then they could be partners. With the discussions about catastrophic occurrences, safety and routine program officials out of the equation, are you looking for a hierarchy from the university president down to the program director to the clinical liaisons? I'm not sure how far up the chain you want this hierarchy document defined. Thank you. To be quite honest, we haven't got into those details yet. Kind of the way NAACLS has always worked, to echo what Robert said before with allocation, just time allocation of our volunteers and our staff. We really see if the standard is appropriate and the public comment on the standard before we really get in the nuts and bolts of the compliance. I really understand how that can lead to some confusion and frustration. But in the perfect world, we would have all the details available, but we just generally don't take that next step of developing compliance until we see if the standard is appropriate. But you can expect more details in the compliance guide.
And I could, if I may, because I probably
Yeah.
caused a bit of kerfuffle with that, with my explanation. You know, we all have somewhere, I'm sure, I'll be so bold to say we all do, we have listed a means for the students to resolve conflict remediation, whether it's grades or some sort of other appeal process, to go through their sponsoring hierarchy: program director, assistant dean, associate dean, chair, and so forth. But you know, it might be in separate different places, and it might be tied to one specific policy or procedure, but it's just not clearly defined for them for the outset. That's really what I think we're really looking for is, you know, when we look at defining that hierarchy, you know, it's, you know, the program director, and you go up your appropriate chain in your department if you have a chair, associate chair, dean, and you would decide, as the sponsor would decide, does it stop at the dean? Does it go to the provost? And just have that clearly defined. So then when you mention or tie in other policies and procedures that involve those individuals, the students know what are their resources, who do they report to, or how can they escalate with appropriate staff above. So that's how I would look at that.
Thank you, Robert. If we are not going to have clinical liaisons be certified in general because they're smaller programs, can we specify by program what demonstrated knowledge of the program discipline would mean? In the compliance guide, to sure NLS and NLT have certified folks, as they should, and should we all? And what demonstration would mean for smaller programs? So the clinical liaison is a unique standard. If the board chose, the MLS and MLT could be different. So obviously I encourage you to communicate that in the public comment if you have not already. And what demonstration would mean for smaller programs? I obviously don't have standard language in front of me right now, but I think this idea of demonstration in essence is not markedly different than the current standards written. So I would expect that demonstration, and again, I want to really specify, those of you who spoke to me on the phone, is I don't like to speculate on compliance and standards without the language in front of me, but now I'm doing it and it's recorded. So grain of salt, and please, if what I say is different than what the standard says, the standard ultimately rules. But we currently, I think in essence, this demonstration is similar to our current requirement. So I would expect, even though it's up to the board, that the demonstration component of that would be similar to what it is now. So that's a lot of speculating. I don't know if Robert or Michelle had anything to expound on, or some kind of life rope that made it drag me out.
No, you did well, and that was appropriate.
Thank you. If
But
a hospital,
please
yeah,
sorry, Mark,
yeah.
please utilize the extension of the public comment forum to voice those concerns, ideas, and steps that we could take forward with the board.
The next question, this is a good one. This came up in the public comments, so I'm glad we're talking about it now more explicitly. If a hospital-based program has an academic affiliate that provides a prerequisite coursework only and not discipline-specific content, are they now a partner or an affiliate? They are an affiliate. I am almost certain that this wording is in the definition. If not, there's the task force and the board's intent for it to be. Partnerships handle discipline-specific coursework. We understand that hospital-based programs have, and maybe even some university-based programs have affiliates that handle kind of prereqs, and we're not looking to complicate that process. So the partners handle the discipline-specific part of it. Because we don't need to see if somebody teaching general biology has an MLS certification. The board doesn't really have an interest in that. We're through the questions already. Very good ones. We still have, we're still willing to hang out for a little bit. You can, if you don't feel like typing anything, we can also do it over audio. But if everybody's racing to the public comments, we can also wrap up this call. To be clear, a clinical liaison could be qualified as having demonstrated knowledge as a CLIA laboratory MD, PhD, DO. Without the compliance guide in front of me, I'm not going to I just don't feel comfortable verifying something like that. So I'm sorry, Marianne. I wish I could give more detailed answers, but thank you, Leslie. You also have a good summer. All right, winding down the call. I don't want to leave anybody on a limb. As always, you can always reach out to NAACLS staff if you have questions. And the DLPs, but the DLPs are really kind of got their head in the current standards right now. So maybe if you have questions about the upcoming standards and compliance, start with staff. And without any other questions, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you for everybody for joining. This is a large session. We're glad it was a large session. We expected that. And as we said before, Monday at 9 a.m., please get those comments in. We want to make sure, oh, we have a raised hand. Give me a second, Marianne. Where's my participant lists? There we go. Oh, looks like you put your hand down, Marianne. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and raise it again. I'll give you the ability to talk. May have been a mistake. So yeah, what I was saying is that the operative time is 9 a.m. on Monday. I know we usually do stuff by end of business day, but we need to get these comments to our review committee members to review. So, and we're cutting it close on our review committee meeting at the end of the month. So as soon as staff gets in the office, we are going to start organizing that and sending it off. Okay, thank you, Robert, for all of your help. Thank you, Michelle, and we will talk to everybody soon.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mark.
Be safe,
Thank you,
everyone,
Robert.
and thank you for your attention and time with us today.